Today I'd like to talk to you about a project that I did last year, and this was originally going to be a full video, but it just ended up never really happening, even though I did finish the project itself. So I don't quite have all the footage that I'd like for this video, but we'll make do with what we have. I discovered this website called Zsculptors.com that has a variety of 3D models for sale that people can print on their own. And they had this one called Diorama Star Wars, which was Jabba on his throne with a variety of other characters and accessories and things like that. It looked really promising. So I decided to contact them and see if they might want to give me a review copy, and they kindly did agree to do that. Now, the models from Zsculptors are quite detailed, and you can print them up to and maybe even beyond 1/6 scale, which is quite large. But at the same time, I had this AlphaWise resin printer in for review, and I decided I would use that for this project, which meant, of course, printing everything at much smaller sizes than they were originally designed for, which in a few cases led to some issues I'll talk about later. Now, this video isn't intended as a review of this printer at all, and I don't really have time to go into resin printing in detail, but suffice to say that it involves having a vat of liquid resin, as you see here, into which a platform is lowered, and then layer by layer the model is exposed using UV light, and it's capable of making some amazingly detailed models, but it's also very messy and potentially dangerous. Now here you can see one of the pieces that I did print. That's Jabba's head, and it's very different from traditional FDM 3D printing, as you can probably tell. There was quite a learning curve for me, just figuring out what the best orientations were for the models and how best to support them. And here you can see Jabba after I printed him and rinsed him off with alcohol, and also had him cure in the sun for quite a while to harden up the resin. Now with these models, as I said, they're kind of designed to be printed at a much larger scale, so some of the details end up getting lost even with a very finely detailed print like this. But I think it came out pretty well. I wish I had used a color other than white for this because it makes it difficult to see a lot of the details. One of the main problems I had from resizing these parts like I did was that they no longer fit together as they were intended to. You can see that they have little pegs here that are meant to go into holes, and because the tolerances are now way too tight, it just won't fit in properly. So I had to, in most cases, remove the pegs and just sort of glue the parts together. At first I did try sort of shaving down some of the parts or, enlarging the holes, but really it worked best to just get rid of them altogether. Now the model from Zsculptors actually has 3 fingers and a thumb, which is, as I've mentioned in the past, not correct for a Return of the Jedi Jabba, so I decided to get rid of the thumb, and also the mouthpiece for his hookah pipe ended up breaking off because it was so thin, so I just removed that altogether. Finally, I filled all the obvious cracks with some Bondo glazing and spot putty. You can see here how very small things like Bib Fortuna's fingers are here. It's incredibly small and detailed. You can't get anywhere near that with traditional 3D printing, so I was very impressed by that. Leia as well came out really well and amazingly detailed. Now I should mention that normally when you're printing something of this size, you would probably have it all be one model and just print it like that, instead of this one, which was, I guess, 4 or 5 different parts that I then glued together, including like one just for her little braid. So, and the same thing is true here, where there were several parts for Salacious Crumb where normally you would just print it all as one piece, but it came out pretty well. Just look at how thin that tail and his ears and things are. I had a big gap between the tail and the body where they just didn't fit together properly, as I mentioned, so I did fill those in with the spot putty, and while it looks kind of messy here, it will be just fine once we paint it. This part didn't print properly when I was printing the railing, but that's the only major problem that I had. I did try and fill in some of the gaps there with the spot putty. And of course here are a couple of the little accessories, a cup and plate of food, which I thought were nice touches. For the throne itself, I originally tried printing it using an FDM printer just because I thought it was kind of a waste to use just this much resin for something just flat like this, but it didn't come out nearly as well as this did, although you can see one problem that I did have here, which is these bands that appeared on a lot of models that I did with the AlphaWise printer, and I never really was able to figure out the issue there. I wanted to try using some clear resin for the clear parts of the hookah pipe and frog bowl, so I did that. You can see here it looks rather yellow and cloudy. I mean, the yellow part is appropriate, but the cloudiness I wasn't crazy about. So I went back and sprayed this with some gloss lacquer, and it actually made it look much more transparent, as you'll see later on. I primed these in gray so that we could see some of the detail on the model better on camera, and you can see where I've lost some detail there between the tail and the body, where I had to join them together, but that can be made up for to some degree with paint. Those dots, divots in the back, are from the support material. And although resin printing is very, very smooth, in general, you can see a little bit of stair-stepping there, although that's not a big deal in real life. I did want to print at least part of this at full size just to show you what the full size model would look like. So I decided to use my FDM 3D printer, the Creality CR10S4, to print just Jabba himself. And if we look at these pieces individually here, you can see that there's a lot of detail there that didn't really come through on the resin print just because it's so small. And of course, because these parts were printed at full size, all the pegs and everything fit together properly, and you can assemble it quite easily. If you look at the arm piece here, interestingly enough, the hookah pipe also broke off there. So you see he's got a piece of the pipe still in his hand. But that may be a part that could use some improvement, just strengthening and whatnot. But it does fit into the body quite well, as does the tail. I didn't do anything beyond this, so I didn't finish it or paint it in any way. But I think it would come out quite well if you did. I'd really be interested to see a full-sized painted version of this. Finally, here's the resin-printed version and the original size version side by side, so you can see just how different they are in size. Unfortunately, I don't have any video of me actually painting this because that was right at the time when I sort of stopped taking video, but I do have this picture of sort of the end of the process, and here we have the finished model. I'm really pleased with how this turned out overall. It compares very favorably to some commercial or garage kit models that I've done in the past. It would have been nice if they could have included his arm tattoo, and the throne itself is kind of too squat. It really should be taller than it is, but it's a great model. You can see here how the transparent resin came out. I think it was a really nice effect. And generally speaking, I think even despite being such small models, I think they painted up pretty well. The only exception really being Leia's face. It looks much better at full size, I will say that. And it's a little bit difficult to paint something that's about the size of the end of a Q-tip. But you can see Bib Fortuna's fingers there. Very impressive, fine detail. As far as I'm aware, this is the only full Jabba's Palace set you can obtain for 3D printing in any way. It, as I said, costs $45 for the full set, or you can get just Jabba on the throne for about $20. I say it's definitely worth it if you want to make a whole project out of it and paint it and so forth. You're not going to find probably a better model for quite a while. If you're interested in getting these models, you can use the link in the video description. I don't have any kind of, coupon codes or anything like that, unfortunately, but maybe if you visit their Facebook page, you can tell them that Mighty Jabba sent you at least. I hope you enjoyed this very belated video, and thanks for watching.